All right, so we've got a great panel here. You've heard the introductions, and we're here today to talk more about how oracles are going to affect decentralized lending markets with people both from the Oracle side and the decentralized lending market side, hearing a little bit from both perspectives. A quick intro on myself. I've been doing security work on Compound, which is a major lending protocol, where we have dealt with oracles. We've also done audits or worked with Oracle providers before. We've also occasionally dealt with the incident response to issues when oracles don't work properly, and we have to quickly figure out how to ensure there is no bad liquidations or bad issues that might arise. And so we'll dig a little bit into those scenarios, have a few questions, but also we'll definitely encourage the panelists to kind of go through some interesting topics, deep dive where appropriate, and go from there. So the first thing I'm going to do, just kind of going down the line, both giving you all some opportunities to introduce yourself, but also to kind of give a little bit of insights on how you feel about the lending or Oracle market, either as an Oracle provider or consumer. How would you describe your philosophy around Oracle management, either as a lending provider or an Oracle? So starting with you.
Yeah, definitely. Mateo from Venus, data lead. Yeah, at Venus, we're the largest lending protocol on BNB chain and CK Sync. Definitely excited to be here to answer the question from Michael. I think that, primarily oracles work and allow blockchain applications to communicate outside the blockchain. This creates a foundation level where markets can interact with one another. That's the main idea behind it. And so our philosophy behind Oracle management will be to provide a secure, fair, and safe environment for our users and the protocol. Oracles essentially are the backbone for how lending protocols work and operate. And so, they essentially provide this safety and integrity for all of our users.
Hi everyone, Marcin, co-founder at RedStone Oracles. We've been building RedStone since late 2020, and what we focus at is technical excellence. So the reason we started, Jacob was the originator, the technical founder. In 2020, he won a couple of hackathons, and Chainlink turned out to be the bottleneck for bringing into production some of his ideas about interest rate and some more sophisticated use cases. So that's the reason he wanted to solve the scalability problem of oracles, especially like back in the days, the push one. He used to be smart contract auditor, so he has a good, let's say, security background, because this is essential for oracles. Like, I would say probably majority of people over here are going to agree that oracles equal reliability. Like, this is one single thing that should be always in place. It has to be super reliable. And right now, RedStone is very quickly growing. I would say one of the quickest in terms of metrics. Over 100 clients, more than 50 chains supported in both the push and pull model. Clients such as Venus, Pendle, Morpho, a couple of other notable projects. And we focus a lot about the user. So we acknowledge there are mainly like two buckets in terms of like lending protocols. The ones that are a bit more grounded on the ecosystem already, and they are the other ones that are trying to innovate with new ideas and some more in-depth use cases, right? So for example, Aave probably is more on the side of like making sure that everything is super stable and the billions of dollars that are set into the protocol are not lost. But there are some other protocols that are a bit more interested in making riskier bets and then innovating, for example, with the pool model Oracle or some more interesting use cases like, for example, Oracle extractable value or other areas.
Sure. So I'm Nick. I'm the founder of Chronicle. Chronicle is the, I think, second largest Oracle protocol after Chainlink. I think we secure over $11 billion in TVL for DeFi heavyweights like Spark, like MakerDAO, and Morpho. And I would say our kind of Oracle philosophy is generally around one, resilience. We've been in this space longer than everyone. We were effectively the first Oracle on Ethereum going live in May of 2017. So we're kind of very focused on kind of maintaining that reputation as like DeFi is like old as like most Lindy Oracle. So you come to us, right, when you want kind of to secure your mission critical systems. Our philosophy, though, is generally around transparency, right? We really want to embody the ethos of don't trust, verify. And so we really want to have people stop looking at oracles as like a fortune teller, right? That just gives you a number and you kind of just accept that as face value. We want to give you, one, transparency, but two, legibility to be able to see where this data is coming from and why does the oracle say what the oracle says.
Yes, hello, I'm Sam, CEO of Phoenix Labs. We're a smart contract dev shop that is working on Spark. And our flagship protocol called Sparkland, which is an Aave fork, naturally uses oracles. I would say I don't really have a philosophy on oracles, but they're like a necessary service to run a lending market, so that's good.
You say it for me. No, just kidding. No, hi everyone. My name is Emilio. I work for Aave Labs. I'm currently VP of Engineering. I was one of the core developers of all three versions of the Aave protocol, and Oracle is always been a hot topic in regard to our protocol in general to the DeFi space. So excited to see what comes out of this panel.
All right. So some other questions ultimately come down to like what's going to make or break a decentralized lending market when it comes to oracles. So we've seen some ways on how not to do it. I think just generally speaking, anyone else can correct me, but like using on-chain prices or TWAPs can usually get you in trouble. We learned that early in DeFi summer. But I guess just like an open question, and anyone just feel free to jump in, like what are like the number one considerations when it comes to you and like either selecting an oracle or providing an oracle? Like if there's one critical factor when it comes to deciding between like what oracle you should plug into a decentralized lending market, what lending markets you feel comfortable using, like depending on the oracle strategy, like is there one simple answer or is there maybe a more complicated one? So anyone?
Yeah, maybe I can step in. I think that, from a lending perspective, it's important to look at two variables, actually. So it's accuracy and timeliness. When it comes to accuracy, it's essentially the price deviation from the ground truth, and then timeliness will be the update frequency of the Oracle price feed. So, from a risk management perspective, it makes sense to try to optimize these two parameters and try to maximize both accuracy and timeliness. So I would say that's like, the key thing to look out for.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Well, I would say that there are a few aspects to look for when selecting an oracle for a protocol that, like, it supposedly should scale to billions of dollars. Like, for sure, I subscribe to what was said before. So, reliability of the oracle, making sure that it is like available 24/7, 365 days a year, and whatever occasion there is, like we have been seeing like crazy market behaviors over the years. Like I can recall, I don't know, like the Black Thursday, DeFi Black Thursday, when I remember we saw like 60% price drop in like a couple of hours across the whole market. It was pretty insane. I remember like more recently the Curve situation or the Uni situation where like just publishing on the forum like the fee switch proposal caused like the price to skyrocket like 50% in 15 minutes or something like that, which ultimately caused some problems on some protocols as well. So the ability to be available like with the highest like availability and also the highest resolution, so that you can capture as quickly as possible price movements. This brings some challenges, of course. Like for example, on the Ethereum blockchain, it's really hard to have high resolution because of the complexity of the transaction and transaction costs. And the moment you start increasing resolution, you incur in a higher cost. I think it's kind of exponential. Like it depends on the behavior, but it can get pretty crazy in terms of cost pretty quickly. And that's probably the reason why, for example, Aave adopts like the Oracle they are just like consumer of the Oracle. There is no, like we have seen in the past, like Compound, for example, it has like the push design where like the price is pushed actually in DAO controlled Oracle. I don't remember if it's DAO controlled, but
Yeah, it's a UAV anchor. Like you could basically, the price is push and then you compare it to the on-chain Uniswap price, which ironically with the Uni spike was actually the one thing that caused bad debt out of everything.
Yeah, which is actually a design that I like the philosophy against it, because it would allow like certain mechanisms that I would like to have. But the problem is the cost. Like it makes like cost prohibitive for a DAO to be able to sustain it, and that's why like Aave basically just feeds out of like the prices that are committed on chain, like and to calculate like collateralization constraints, which is basically the main aspect that handles like the debt on the platform.
Yeah, and that's like the model that Compound V3's ultimately gone to, and we actually deprecated that system earlier this year for the obvious reason of it. The only time it was ever triggered is when Uniswap was out of bounds, not Chainlink. So the fear of we don't want to have to trust Chainlink turned out to be, like, it turns out every time they were right and the on-chain price was wrong. So eventually we just decided we're just going to trust that Chainlink knows what they're doing.
Yeah, but I think you touched on something interesting there, right? Which is something that no one here has mentioned, right? We talked about like update frequency. We've talked about like reliability. No one's really talked about data, right? So maybe and while I agree with all of you, right, the data piece is really important, right? And so when you're choosing an Oracle, right, I think look under the hood. Where is it getting the data from? And I think, Marcin, this is a problem that you and I probably deal with all the time is there's a scenario of there's a team, they're launching a token, they're going to seed some liquidity in Uniswap or in Balancer, maybe in Curve, and they're like, hey, can you make us an Oracle, right? And Michael, I think you touched on this, right? Where if you're just using like a single Uniswap pool as like your Oracle, or even if you just use it as the only source of data for an Oracle, then the Oracle can be easily manipulated, easily, right? Even if you have multiple pools of liquidity, but those pools are on different chains, well, now you can easily dislocate one of the pools, and there's not like a ready-made arbitrage that someone can do, right, to rebalance those pools. So the data equation and like what sources are you using, how many sources, how liquid are they, what mechanisms do you have in place on the Oracle side to filter out outliers or things that are wonky, usually at the expense of latency, right? There's a fine line between like, a good way to pose it this is like, if a whale goes and manipulates a Uniswap pool with like, by buying $10 million worth of a token, how long do you have to wait before that's not a manipulation and like it's actually, that is just the new price, right? And I don't think there's a right answer there. There's like a gradient, but eventually the Oracle should be like, yep, that's the price. That's what I'm going to report, right?
Yeah. And somewhere in there is a lot of liquidations.
And somewhere along there, right, is a lot of liquidations and a lot of risk, right? But I think it's not talked about as much in the Oracle space. I think like there's a lot of talk about what are like the consensus mechanisms. Oh, we use this type of signature, we use validators, or we use a ZK proof, right? But very few people are talking about the data, and the data is, I think, where most of the risk really is.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that gets into another question I wanted to pose, especially to like the Oracle providers here. Like, how do you decide like what you decide to provide prices for? Like, when does an asset become mature enough to get a price feed that you feel good about, and how much of that risk you like say, like that you assume in terms of saying, hey, we feel like we're confident in providing you stable prices, even if those prices are crazy. Like, how much of it is, okay, we're just going to give you the price, and the price might be crazy, and you, the lending market, need to decide, or whoever's going to consume this, that you're okay with that, or just say we're not comfortable like listing this because we think the price is, it's just not there. Because we see a lot of balancing acts of like, you want the newest, latest thing, but does it have a market ready for a mature price feed?
Yeah, I believe what Nick has said is something tremendously important, like the sources of data and then making sure that you understand like what you're pulling from and essentially like how they're behaving. One also aspect that is crazy important is being a bit more user-centric. So majority of the topics that people will try to cover is like, okay, we do oracles for oracles. No, like in the end of the day, someone is using that, right? So you have to understand your user, like how they are using that and whether they understand what are the circuit breakers or any kind of like implementations you're offering them. So whenever we have a new segment with RedStone, we always try to listen to the people that would like to integrate that. That's the reason we were the first one to create like price feeds about LRTs with EtherFi, then Renzo, Puffer, KelpDAO, and so on, because we just saw it's a very prominent market. In the very beginning, the liquidity was very low, but right now, say what? Aave is using like EtherFi and Renzo as a market, right? So if we were to stay just conservative, probably we would just use ETH and Bitcoin, right? So there should be some, like this is a problem of an oracle. Like honestly, I think this is like the problem of a builder of an oracle, staying conservative versus innovating and providing value for the client that is pushing you very hard. As Nick said, like I get thousands of messages from kamikaze people telling me, hey, I have like $20,000 of liquidity on Curve. Can you create an oracle out of that? Of course, I mean, technically, we are capable of doing so, but we are not going to offer that. I mean, in the past with RedStone, we had a module that was called custom oracles. So you essentially could use our infrastructure and create your own oracle for a token. But we didn't even made it like to production that people could actually use it in like protocols because we saw people burn their fingers. Like this is the problem. Like there are really few people who understand the spectrum of the risk that is associated. And right now, in order to, and we keep updating the requirements for a new price feed to be created. An innovation that we've recently introduced, and actually this is alpha, we haven't announced it yet, but we'll announce pretty soon. We included AI models to detect anomalies and like outliers in especially the early stage liquidity, low liquidity tokens that we provide for, because the anomalies for ETH or Bitcoin, they are usually not that like big because Binance is having majority of the volume. But when you're talking about the ones that have only like on-chain liquidity and majority of yield-bearing assets are only traded on DEXs because people don't trade in them that much and they are not listed on CEXs, this is where the devil usually lies in. And then you also have the conversation between the market rate for those assets, like yield-bearing assets, and the exchange rate that I believe both Spark and Aave are using, right? So essentially, and maybe here like an extended question to you guys, what if one of those protocols explode? What if EtherFi or Lido explodes tomorrow? Like what's going to happen with your systems? I'm genuinely curious right now, as of today. So ETH price stays as this, but the protocol...
What do you mean by explode? How exploding?
I mean explode, like literally...
Go to zero?
Yeah.
Like some slashing event, some minor slashing event?
Or no, like critical bug in the code, like something... Multisig, oh yeah, multisig update that the contract is gone or whatever.
You're fucked. Like
Yeah,
that's...
but do I understand it correctly that both Aave and Spark would explode?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The degree is important as well. Like it depends, like how much of that is the collateral. Like if it's Lido, like I think everything is done.
Yeah, we can basically find some other job to
You put on your McDonald's
yes,
hat.
but I think the whole DeFi, not only lending protocols.
Yeah.
No, I mean
we lobbied the EF to fork.
Yeah. Yes. I mean the topic here is a bit like complex. There are many angles to it. Like for assets like that are derivatives that have direct redemption, like Lido, or other derivatives like EtherFi, I think also. Yeah. In that particular scenario, I do think that the exchange rate approach is the correct one because like any liquidator that can redeem will for sure take the opportunity. I do believe that we need some kind, and I think, for example, Chainlink is working on proof of reserve, right? So if you have a mechanism that tells you, okay, this asset is actually fine, not in terms of secondary liquidity because it's directly redeemable for the underlying, but from a technical perspective, so like the assets that are actually backing the derivative are actually there, then you're fine. If like you have debt exposure against that asset, and that asset goes to zero instantaneously because, I don't know, something like what happened to Radiant happens to Lido. Let's hope that never happens. But let's say like there is a multi-sig takeover, somehow malicious, and someone managed to take all the ETH out of Lido, right? The debt that is taken against that asset, whether you have a proof of reserve or not, is gone. Like you cannot, it's the same for wrapped BTC. If someone takes over the wrapped BTC DAO and somehow manages to take out all the BTC that are held by BitGo, there's not much that you can do, honestly, even if you have a proof of reserve. If there are scenarios where, for example, progressive slashing of Lido, so it starts slowly to lose the backing, that's a different story. And there are options that you can evaluate to actually manage to mitigate that risk.
And the reason these guys are doing so, because you manage billions of dollars of those assets, right? Like wrap staked ETH, like I don't know what's the size of the market.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it does change when you start getting up to billions of dollars. There's actually no like pegged asset that we hold on the Sky, formerly known as Maker, balance sheet. So even beyond the lending market itself, like we have treasury bills and stuff like that, Athena. So we price most things to the underlying asset because there's just not that much liquidity outside of ETH and Bitcoin. Lido has a fair bit, but it's continually drying up, especially as they've turned off the yield farming to support the peg before the withdrawals were activated. So yeah, I mean, we take the same approach as Aave. The only Oracle prices we have in Sparkland are for ETH USD and Bitcoin USD. And for ETH USD, that is the most important price feed in all of DeFi. So we actually have, we run Chronicle and Chainlink redundantly on that feed to make sure that it is always accurate. And then for like LSTs, LRTs, we use the exchange rate conversion that the issuer reports. And this will take into account slashing events, minor slashing events. Eventually, it will be reflected in this exchange rate once the issuer updates it.
A quick follow-up on that, as you mentioned, you're using both Chainlink and Chronicle redundantly. When you say redundantly, what does that mean? Like if you were receiving prices from both, are you comparing those prices? Are you choosing one randomly?
No. Like it compares both of them, and then if they're within an agreement range, then it's valid. If it's invalid, it uses a Uniswap TWAP to tie break between the two.
Okay.
It does not use the Uniswap price. It uses it as a tiebreaker in the event that they disagree.
Okay, yeah, that's better than the scenario we were in. Okay, cool.
So the anchor doesn't, right, is never selected, right? The anchor is just the thing that is flipping the switch to either direction.
Yeah, I did have another question that got into that, which is like how you deal with redundancy if Chainlink stops working, if Chronicle stops working,
Yeah, it would switch to the other Oracle. So it's always using an Oracle price. This is important. We don't want to use pricing from an on-chain DEX. But if one of the oracles goes, we have liveness basically if one of the oracles goes down, if one of the oracles prints a completely malicious price. So it's a very robust system for ETHUSD.
Awesome. Is there any other one that want to comment on like just dealing with that sort of redundancy and how you might deal with scenarios where one of your oracle fails, how you might move to another?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, well, similar to what Sam is saying, we do have a mechanism that's kind of revolutionary in Venus. It allows for a more robust and resilient solution for the Oracle problem. What we have, and we called it resilient oracles, it's essentially a mechanism of 3 oracles in which you have to get an agreement of 2 out of the 3 so that the transaction is executed in the markets. If an oracle fails, we'll still have a backup of 2 oracles, and if they agree on the price, then the market continues to operate normally. And if all 3 disagree, then the transaction gets reverted, essentially. So all of the actions on that market are stopped. So it is a way for us to, try to protect user funds and the ecosystem in case of an oracle failure. Yeah.
Has that ever been a problem for you on the listing side of things? Because I can imagine a lot of assets don't have 3 oracles, or can't afford to purchase 3 different oracles. Do you like take on those costs as a protocol, or is it still on the asset issuer to get 3 different oracles? I'm just curious. Sorry.
No.
Like,
Yeah, no. It's
sorry, Michael. Don't want to hijack. Just.
No, it's a fair point, and it's an interesting question because I do think that, new markets involve new risks, and it is a dilemma that currently happens in lending markets, validating if we want to add a market or not. As far as our solution and the resilient oracle mechanism that I was just talking about, we do have flexibility over which oracles and which assets we implement this with. So if we are starting out with a new market, it doesn't really make sense to have the 3 oracle layout. We can just have 1 oracle acting at
So
a
it's a
time.
tiered risk approach based on how much debt you're underwriting. Got it.
Exactly,
Makes total sense.
And here actually, I work closely with Venus because they are using RedStone. So many times what happens is what I said, like for ETH and BTC, probably every single oracle is going to provide you price feed because those are the kings of the price feed. So it's nothing fancy. But usually when we get a request for a new price feed, so let's call it, we created the first and only still liquid Bitcoin staking oracle for Lombard, Solve, Palm BTC. Very interesting market. Still can explode because Babylon hasn't turned on the yield yet over there, but it is also a very potential one. So over there, like if you are the only provider when Venus is choosing us, then it's only us, and then the next provider is coming over, they're adding the new one, and then ideal scenario is to have the free one, but like if there's only one, you revert to having just one.
How does the largest lending market deal with potential oracle failures?
So we have Chainlink.
Yeah.
In Chainlink we trust. No, I mean, jokes aside, like I do like, of course, like if you want multiple oracle design, like you need at least 3. 2 is not enough because like you don't know which one to trust, basically, which one is the faulty one. You need 3, but then maybe you can find 3 for ETH and BTC. But like if you support like 20 assets, like Aave does, it gets tricky to get 3 oracles that provide like reliable data for all the 3. 3 oracles to provide reliable data for all the 20 assets that the protocol supports across 12 networks. Because that's
Call us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would love to, and it's something that we are experimenting for before actually, some alternative designs that actually doesn't require alternative oracles. So it's kind of similar to what Compound was doing with the Anchor price, but as Anchor price is going to be like a TWAP of the previous Chainlink answers. So that is the idea we are exploring. It's not sure that we are going to implement it yet, but we are gonna we are analyzing if it's actually feasible and like the advantages. Like
So is the trade-off there liveness, right? So if
no, like the main thing that we want to be able to do is at least to have some kind of ability to react to improper oracle behavior, right? At the moment, like in Aave, there is no chance, essentially. Like I think in other protocols as well, like Compound, I think uses Chainlink direct, fetches Chainlink directly, or most of the Morpho markets also have the same behavior. I think they only have Chainlink as oracle. So if Chainlink pushes a price that is incorrect,
We would survive that.
you would survive, yeah, but because like you have mostly, as you mentioned, you have wrapped BTC as,
We don't have much Bitcoin
yes.
exposure.
BTC USD and ETH USD, and that's everything, yeah. But like, for example, Aave is exposed, Power Protocol is exposed to Uni, but it's kind of a different, like from a risk perspective, it's much more insulated because you, of course, like as a strategy, you decided to have a much tighter exposure to multiple crypto assets, and you chose like Bitcoin and ETH essentially. So Spark would survive that, but like because if, for example, if it's Uni, like it happened with Uni in the past, I don't see anything like you mentioned before. I don't see anything like this happening to Bitcoin and ETH because the market is so large that having a 50% price spike in 15 minutes is, I don't see that likely to happen. But it can happen to other assets like Uni or MKR or Aave that are less liquid, right? So in that scenario, you would like to have the capability to at least have some kind of possibility to react. So the idea there is that use the TWAP of past shilling. If we give for granted that the oracle starts misbehaving at a certain point in time, then we can say that all the answers before were trustable. So if you have an on-chain history that cannot be manipulated, you can read that on-chain history, calculate the TWAP, and use it as an anchor. And if there is a delta between the current price and the anchor that goes past a confidence interval, then you might decide to take some actions. So for example, in the case of Uni, the action that you would like to take is to immediately disable borrowing of Uni. Because like shorters, for example, might take the opportunity to try and borrow as much as they can. So if the price goes down immediately after, they profit from that, and potentially they can cause insolvency, right? So this is the kind of implementation that we are looking for, and it's probably something that we will pursue like with V4. And I would also like to see more permissionless innovation going forward in Aave. So giving everyone the ability to build on top of our technology, and if they want to use alternative oracles, just be my guest.
What would you do in the event if there was an ETH-USD mispricing?
Currently, or with the
No,
new
with
design?
this like new system you're thinking
It depends
of.
it depends on the mispricing. So if it's, for example, if it's attempt to manipulate the market to steal, I don't know, to set a wrong price of it and steal all the collateral. So let's say there is
It's
a
not manipulation, because I mean ETH-USD is so liquid, like that's not really an issue.
Yeah, but let's say there is, I don't know, multi-sig takeover of Chainlink, and someone managed to push, I don't know, supply one ETH, put $1 quadrillion for one ETH and borrow the whole market. This is something that can happen. Hopefully, again, never happens. In that scenario, like you can test against the confidence interval and reject the price altogether, for example.
But would you just like freeze the market or something?
No, like you can, for example, because before we will also have the ability to set like configurations, not for everyone, but like for new users only. So we call this dynamic configuration. For example, if this happens, you could freeze the market instantaneously without the push of the price. So that would be the idea. This is we are still exploring. I mean, the design is not final, but we have these ideas that we are exploring for before. Yeah.
I guess like just hearing some of that, like in cases of, I've heard some solutions on like, okay, you can have like an automated system that's like checking these prices, having fallbacks. Is there anything you thought about it, like instant response? Like, okay, the oracle has failed. We ultimately, like what I heard was just you pause borrows essentially in some of the scenarios. We had the same thing in Compound. We had like hovering our finger over the button, and then it kind of normalized. But I guess is there any, before we start getting to final questions, are there any thoughts about how y'all think about incident response, either from the oracle provider or like a lending market perspective? Like, what are you prepared to do in emergency scenarios, and do you have those tools available? Your signers ready to show up on weekends, that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, I can step in. I think that, you know, in emergency scenarios, there's a couple of things we can try to do in order to protect user funds. One of them would be, well, initially with the setup of the resilient oracle, if the three oracles don't agree on the price, then essentially transactions revert. So it's a mechanism also to stop interacting with the market and to stop all of the transactions that are coming into play. If that's not the case and something wrong happens, we also have risk partners. We have a lot of monitoring pools and alarms that will essentially alert if something wrong is going on, and it just gives us time to do some actions and to try to pause the markets or to try to take some other considerations in place to protect user funds. I think that in this realm of the actions that we can take with Venus, it's an interesting approach because we have different set of governance proposals that we call VIPs. One of them, the most significant here, would be the critical VIP that allows us to take quick action and to essentially, fix a problem, to pause a market, to set some caps or reduce collateral factors just to protect the overall integrity of the protocol. If that all fails, then we do have a risk fund, which is, it acts kind of like an insurance for our users. If there's an insolvency in one of the markets or in the protocol overall, we will use this risk fund to repay the debts that are created. And yeah, I mean, currently it's at around $10 million, so it is kind of a safety net for the protocol and for their users. Yeah.
So I think you touched on, right, is it, I think you were hinting at, is it the responsibility of the Oracle, right, or the responsibility of the lending protocol, right? Like, what should the role of the Oracle be? Should it just give you the raw data feed and then it's these guys' responsibility to kind of parse, post-process, potentially circuit break, or is that responsibility on the Oracle, or is it potentially both?
It depends on the failure, but yeah.
Sure. And Marcin, your response will be, we're very user-focused, and so we'll customize the Oracle to whatever the user needs. But I think more from a generalized approach on the Oracle side, there's a few things you can do that are really powerful, but there's not that many things that you can do, right? So you can, when you're ingesting data, right, say, okay, there is an outlier in this data. Either there is huge volume coming from a single source that's not reflected in any of the other sources, or there is a price dislocation on one source that's not reflected on any of the other sources, right? And so you can do some filtering, you can do some weighting, you can smooth out those dislocations. And then you have things that are more like, okay, most coins aren't going to jump 50% in the span of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, right? So you can have internal circuit breakers inside the Oracle itself that says like, okay, even if all the sources are painting that this thing has pumped up by, 50% plus, or in some cases, 100% plus, right? The number is not important. The number is like what you work out with the customer, right? And you advise them, right, and say like, okay, your coin is relatively low liquidity. It can actually jump up, 100% in an hour, right? Versus something like ETH, highly liquid, right? It's not going to pump 100% in an hour, right? So you can set sane circuit breakers internal to the Oracle, right? Where the Oracle just says like, no, I'm not going to acknowledge that this is a valid price, and the Oracle doesn't update, right? It just kind of like ignores that. But, as we talked earlier, right, there is a threshold where if this dislocation, happens long enough, right, then no, that is the new legitimate price. Eventually, the Oracle does need to update, right? So it's more a matter of just ensuring that when you're working with primarily lending protocols, right, that you're on the same page of what is the behavior, right? You say these are the different scenarios that can happen, and in the Oracle, in the way that we're configuring it for you now, this is what the result of each of these scenarios is going to be, right? And as long as we're all on the same page of what happens in every situation, then in combination, we can handle those scenarios in the best way possible. I think there's a real risk when there is not this consensus of, in this situation, the Oracle is going to do this, so we should do this, that you can get into trouble. Because you assume the Oracle will work in one way, and it doesn't. Or we assume the lending protocol will react in one way, and then it doesn't.
I have a little trivia on that. Like, not many know that, like, when we were designing Aave 1, we were planning to have our own Oracle, to design our own solution. Oh. Yeah, we spent 2 months, I think. And then after 2 months, we were like, okay, maybe this thing is actually more complicated than the protocol. We realized at some point that, like, okay, like this is going to take more effort actually than the protocol itself. So that's like where the whole Chainlink story started. So we had to find an alternative, and we went with Chainlink. But I have huge respect for Oracle providers because it's a really, really hard job. And like there are many aspects, as you mentioned, that you need to keep in consideration, like not only like provide the most accurate data, but also understand how your users are going to use that data, because it might not be the way that you expect that the user are using it, or vice versa. Yeah.
Yep. All right. We spent most of this time talking about potential failures and things like that, and that's because as a security auditor, that's usually what we're thinking about when we put it in the security assumptions of every audit we do. But we have a little bit of time left, so I just wanted to open it up to the panel on what are we excited about going forward on like oracles in terms of like interesting innovations, interesting things that maybe y'all see that you're going to utilize in your protocols, OEV, see if there's any hot takes on that. So open floor for that. Marcin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, maybe just to double click on the previous one. Yes, I agree that the user should be aware like how Oracle is going to behave, and then we should also understand there are a couple of categories of users, because lending protocol requires a bit of a different Oracle approach than a perp, than sometimes even CDP, sometimes even like other leverage protocol like Gearbox and these kind of approaches, right? We, for example, monitor for on-chain sources slippage. So if slippage goes out of the specific boundaries, we can also detach the source automatically. As mentioned, we use right now AI to detect anomalies, which is also very helpful in some of the cases. About innovation and going forward, I am truly fascinated about BTCFi. I mean, Bitcoin crossed 81K today, and I believe it's an asset that has no ceiling. So if you are able to create like any sort of resilient and interesting solutions on top of that, and we right now are seeing like many attempts, I think it's going to be huge. And as you guys mentioned, like for you, at least for Spark, it's only ETH and Bitcoin that matters. On ETH, there is already quite a lot of innovation that has happened. On Bitcoin, it's way harder because it was never created to have like innovative ideas on top. But I believe we are mature enough to work on that. So I'm super bullish on BTCFi. I'm pretty bullish on restaking, actually, to be honest. We are one of the few big oracles that created testnet AVS on EigenLayer already. And we are just waiting to launch it on mainnet to tap into the restake security. And the third one, I think OEV, like Oracle Extractable Value, is also very interesting for us. Like we look into that, but it's actually a bit more towards the user, like the lending protocol or any other that is going to use that, because you recapture a very sensitive part of the protocol, which is essentially like liquidations, right? So yeah, I would close those three.
Everyone else, we start with start at the end and move down, short and sweet.
For me, most bullish and most excited I'm about oracles and DeFi specifically is about RWAs. So like it's gonna be, like it's getting more and more traction. I think we are reaching the point of escape velocity, and now maybe we get a bit more deregulation, it's gonna be even easier. And that's gonna bring some other challenges because like I can see how important oracles are in that case, because like of course we are talking, I mean stable coins, centralized stable coins are probably the first real RWA on chain, and like we will probably see even more sophisticated approach for other kind of asset classes that are coming on chain.
I completely agree with Emilio. At Chronicle, we for what 6-7 years of building oracles, either within the Maker umbrella or within the Chronicle umbrella, it was always DeFi kind of price oracles. We recently launched like our second product, which is a proof of reserve style oracle called Verified Asset, and we're extremely bullish on. I hate calling it RWA. I'm going to call it the tokenized assets. But I think you hit on something really important, that with tokenized assets, the oracle becomes even more important. Because the tokens themselves for tokenized assets are not crypto native. So you really require an oracle to like contextualize these assets, right? To give all of the metadata. And I think we've seen simple implementations of this, right? Like, so for example, for stable coins, right? Like, do the treasury bills backing this thing exist? or do they not? But once you step beyond that, it gets exponentially more complex. And if protocols want to handle these assets in a responsible, risk-managed way, they're going to need a lot more data than just, does the underlying asset exist or does it not? And so we've kind of built a product that's like tailored specifically around this, which we launched in August with M0. And since then, we've integrated with Centrifuge, we've integrated with Midas, we've integrated with Superstate, and a couple others that we have yet to announce. So I think it's a really exciting space. And you know, as you mentioned, right, with the recent elections in the U.S., tokenized assets are just going to accelerate, right? As we see kind of maybe a bit more of a hands-off approach from U.S. regulators.
Let's hope. Sam, Mateo, we're almost out of time, but any quick takes?
I'm good. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Emilio. I think that RWA is going to be huge. I know you don't like calling it RWA, but yeah, no, it's oracles are the ones that are going to allow for the communication between the smart contracts, Web 3.0 with the outside world, specifically with capital markets and TradFi. So I do think that it's, oracles are the ones that are going to make this link and are going to be the ones that are making it possible to onboard more than $100 trillion. I think that's the valuation of TradFi right now, of capital markets. So it has a lot of potential. I'm definitely excited for it. And from a lending protocols perspective, it'll be great to think about adding real markets, real in the TradFi world, and allow users to interact with crypto and TradFi as well. So yeah, exciting times.
Tokenize all the things, put the prices on chain, and then borrow against it. Sounds fun?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's a wrap.
Thanks a lot.